Good morning. Glad to have you with us, those who are joining us online as well as those who are joining us here in the auditorium. A good crowd gathered, and it's just refreshing to see you and to hear you sing. John, we do hope that you, Hannah, and the family are blessed by being here today. Our hearts are with you. Our prayers are with you. As Jacob said, Sister Claudia's funeral service will be here at the building tomorrow morning at 10 with visitation at 9. We have several visitors with us today. We're glad to have you. Andy's got her whole family, or a good part of her family, back there with her today, and we're glad to get a chance to meet them from Fort Smith area. But we're glad to have you with us today. As you can tell by the slide, we are returning to a series that we've done 6 lessons on in this series, but it's been a few weeks. We've been off in other directions for a few weeks, so we're going to return there today with some thoughts on friendship, and as far as our expectation and our experience as this series of lessons has been dealing with. I'd ask you to turn to Luke chapter 11, and we'll begin reading in just a moment in verse 5. Friendship is a word that seems to mean a little bit less and less all the time. We use it broader, and any term that gets used broader loses some of its significance. And I can illustrate that very simply for you, and that is simply to say that there is a place where we have friends that we call friends that we've never met. And when you have friends that you've never met, then you're using the term friends a little bit different than what you used to. Now, as I began, I know you're already your minds are wondering, so I'm going to take a minute for a commercial already. And that is because I just spotted folks that I had intended to make a note about, and I just saw them, and that is Alex and Megan. They're about to move to a foreign country, Georgia. And I think this may be the last time they're here with us before they're officially moved, right? So we bid them a nice farewell, and we wish them the very best. They're moving for a job. Alex is going to be working with Lockheed Martin there in Marietta, where you're moving to, I think it is. Okay. So you might ought to take it easy on the Ledbetter and the Strouds over the next few weeks as they experience their children moving into a far country. We love you guys. All right, back to where we were. Luke chapter 11. And you are with me, aren't you, on my statement earlier? Where is it that we have friends that we've never met? What's the answer? Facebook. We call them friends. We've never met them. They're the cousin to a friend of a friend. But because they clicked a button that said friends, we now call them friends. And so my point is we use that word a little more loosely than what we have in the past. We're going to come back in a moment to the context of this passage, but for right now, I want you to just read with me the story that Jesus tells, Luke chapter 11, beginning in verse 5. And he says to them, "Which of you who has a friend will go to him at midnight and say to him, 'Friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine has arrived on a journey, and I have nothing to set before him.' And he will answer from within, 'Do not bother me, the door is now shut, my children are in bed, I cannot get up and give you anything.' I tell you, though, he will get up and give him anything because, though he will not," let me make say that right, "he will not get up and give him anything because he is a friend, yet because of his impudence or his persistency, his consistency, he will rise and give him whatever he needs." Now, it's one of those passages in Scripture that uses the term and talks about friendship or friends. We have different levels of friends. We have those that we now call friends that we clicked on Facebook or they clicked on us that we call a friend, but that barely qualifies. And then the next tier of friends is what we have long time called casual friends. Now, there is a term here that's kind of gone out of use because the word friend has gotten so broad. How often do you say, well, that person is an acquaintance? Being an acquaintance is not a term we use because we use the word friend. And we use the word friend when we barely know someone and they are actually just an acquaintance. But then you have your casual friends, and then I think you can take two categories out of this story to illustrate the level of friendship too. We have then those friends that we will call at midnight. How many friends do you have that you will call at midnight? Not very many. I mean, try it sometimes and you'll find out how many friends you actually have. There are those friends that we will call at midnight. And then there is that group of friends that are really, truly good friends, because these are the group of your friends that will answer your call at midnight. What's really bad is when you call at midnight and they don't answer, because you deemed them good enough friends to call at midnight. They didn't deem you a good enough friend to answer at midnight. You see, friendship, and the key to friendship, and the key to understanding friendship, is that friendship is reciprocal. It is a reciprocal relationship. This series we're talking about experience and expectation. Friendship is a relationship in which we have expectations and then we have experience. And oftentimes our experience does not meet our expectations. You see, because by its very nature, friendship is reciprocal. It is a give and take relationship. You do for someone, basically, they would return the favor. They may or may not have opportunity, but they would. It's a reciprocal, it's a give and take relationship. Friendship is often a place where we keep score. Do you keep score with your friends? Nobody willing to commit with me that they keep score with their friends? Well, let me ask an easier question. Do you have friendships where you do more giving and they do more taking? Anybody got friendships like that? So you do keep score. We do. Now, we're not keeping score and we're not going to do for someone because we're too far, they're too much in our debt at this point. But we do know how those friendships work, right? And we know which ones of our friendships are a little heavy on taking and which of our friendships are a little heavy on giving but will not take. So we do know how those things are balancing out in our lives. Friendship is a reciprocal relationship. And the key to what makes friendship so good and what makes good friends so strong is three little items here. The first one is there on your screen, is because we choose friends. You see, friends are chosen. They're not thrust upon us. Friends are chosen. You know, a person goes from being an acquaintance or somebody that we know to being a friend because we have chosen to bring them into that relationship. We chose them. We also cultivate friendship. Friendship is something that gets cultivated. And so we work on friendship. We water friendship, if you will. We cultivate friendship. And it grows deeper. We all have friends that are deep friends. The bond is very strong, but for whatever reason, we don't see them. They just live a distance away. And the interesting thing about those deep friendships is that occasionally you can visit with one another and just catch up, and you're right back where you were, last time you saw them. A friend of mine texted me last Sunday on my birthday, And by the time 30 minutes had gone by and we texted back a dozen times, we were kind of caught up again, and we hadn't seen one another in a while. And I'm sure now before too long we'll meet somewhere for lunch because we live a distance apart. But we catch up like that. We cultivate friendship. We also call friendship. Got any friends you've called in the last few years? And I don't mean you were unkind to them. I don't mean you were ungracious to them. It's just this friendship wasn't working. It wasn't a true friendship. It wasn't balanced. It wasn't reciprocal. And after a while, if it's not balanced and if it's not reciprocal, if it's not a true friendship, it just sort of wanes. It goes by the wayside. We just simply ignore that friendship. Now, we may call that person our friend for the rest of our lives, but there's been no cultivating in the friendship. We've actually culled the friendship. And because we choose our friends, you see, you don't get to choose family, but you choose friends. You don't get to ostracize family, though some folks try. We walk away from friendship when the friendship isn't what it ought to be. You know, your mother used to tell you, you shouldn't be friends with that person because they're not the right influence. And there are times in our adult life at which we let friendship wane and we let it weaken and we let it disappear because it wasn't spiritual, it wasn't beneficial, it wasn't good, it wasn't helpful in my life. And that's good. It's not a bad thing. We need to understand that. Because friendship is reciprocal, because we do choose our friends, we cultivate friendship, and we call our friendship, that's what makes friendship so strong. That's what makes our best of friends some of the strongest relationships in all of our lives. Because friendship lasts through struggles. It lasts through hardship. You find out who your friends are when you struggle, right? When you have times that are difficult, who will stay with you? Proverbs chapter 18, it's there on the screen in front of you. Chapter 18, verse 24, the last verse of that chapter says, the one who has many companions comes to ruin or may come to ruin. You know, a lot of people around you is not necessarily a good thing. But then he says in the second statement in the verse, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And then if you go back to chapter 17, verse 17 talks about the brother again in a negative way. It says, a friend loves at all times, but a brother is born for adversity. Anybody got a sibling you have struggle, you just struggle a little bit to get along with well? Maybe you're sitting close to you right now. And yeah, siblings have a little bit of rivalry. Siblings have a little bit of struggle. But siblings can also, our brothers and our sisters can also be our best friends. Because we cultivate that relationship if we're wise. Because the truth is we're going to have that relationship all of our life. And so we might as well make the best of that and make it the best it can be. To do otherwise is detrimental to us. Now I want you to go back with me to Luke chapter 11. And I want you to notice what the real import is of this story that Jesus tells and the real reason for which he tells it. In the beginning of the chapter, right there from the beginning, one of the disciples comes to Jesus and he says, teach us to pray. He says, John taught his disciples, teach us to pray. And we get the most brief, abbreviated version of the Lord's Prayer that we find anywhere. Second time we find it here in Luke. Father, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Give us each day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins as we ourselves forgive everyone who is indebted to us, and lead us not into temptation. In that, teach us to pray. The very next thing he says is, which of you, he asks a question, which of you has a friend who will go to him at midnight and say to him, a friend has come by and I need bread. You see, the thing about friendship is we expect more from our friendships than we do from other acquaintances. We give more and we expect more because of the depth of the relationship. And we do more, and that's a good thing. It's okay that you do more for your good friends than you do for the casual person you would meet on the street, though you should be kind and gracious to that person to begin with. But friendship is deeper than that, and so we do more and we expect more. But notice, if you will, in this context, who the friend is. He goes on and tells the story. He knocks on the door at midnight. He says, I need some bread. I need 3 loaves of bread. I have a friend come and I don't have anything to feed him. And the person said, I can't get out of bed. It's late. Don't bother me so late. And Jesus says, but he will do what he asks. Not just simply because of their friendship, but because of his persistency. Because he kept knocking. Because he kept knocking. That's the context. In this context, where he says in verse 9, and I tell you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. In this context, because he said that in other places, and we're not sure exactly in some of those places if he may have told this story there and it just didn't get recorded for us in that context, or if he just told it specifically in only this context. But it makes perfect sense, does it not, of that thing about ask, seek, knock, keep knocking, keep knocking. Verse 10, for everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks it will be opened. And then he asks another question. He's already asked one question, which one of you has a friend who if he comes to you at midnight? And now he asks, what father among you, if his son asks for a fish, will instead of a fish give him a serpent? Or if he asks for an egg, will give him a scorpion? If you then, who are evil, in other words, you're natural, you're human, if you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will the Father in heaven give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him? The lesson here is that you are the friend who is asking, and it's midnight, and you have need, and God is the one that you're asking. Occasionally we try to, or the song leader will try to match our invitation song or the songs around the lesson to the lesson. Sometimes either one of us think about that and sometimes we don't. This morning Alan and I had not talked about that particularly, but right in the middle, I don't know if Alan you picked up on it, but I did when we were reading the line in that song that we sang in first service. There's bread enough in my Father's house and to spare. That comes right out of this story in that great old song. There's bread enough in my Father's house and to spare. Now there's another imagery that it comes from, and that's the prodigal son, which is just a little bit further in this context. And there is the lesson that there's plenty in my Father's house, but I left my Father's house. Here you are the one asking, and you're asking for the bread because there's a need in your life and you need some help. And the message is that there's plenty of bread in the house. There's plenty of bread in the house. God is the one you're asking. We are the friend who comes at midnight. Jesus would say to his disciples in the passage that Terry read a little bit earlier, John 15, 12 through 15, particularly in verse 14. He says, you are my friends. Now, there's one statement that's made both in chapter 14 and again here in chapter 15 that says, "You are my friends if you do what I ask you. You're my friends if you follow me." But also in the context of John chapter 15, he gives another reason why they are his friends. And the reason given there specifically in a little bit broader context is that you are my friends because I have shared things with you. I have shared my mission with you, and you are joining me in that mission. One thing that's always true of the people that we consider good friends, they know things about us that other people don't know. They know the deeper thoughts of our heart. They know the deeper desires of our heart. They know the things that put joy in our heart. They know the things that break our heart. They know our story. And Jesus says to his disciples, on the basis that he had shared with him his mission, and they are participating in that mission with him, he says, "You are my friends." You can spend your whole life seeing God as simply the larger than life, more transcendent than this world, and he is creator of this world, power and magnificent power of this world, and he is. But he also, in his word, if we will spend time there, asks us to also see him as a friend. A friend who we can come to in the middle of the night and say, "I have a need," and he will hear. And he will hear. As we offer our invitation today, as we stand and sing this song together, I would ask you if there are things that you need to lay before your God this morning. There are things that you need to lay before your friends who you call church family this morning. As we stand and as we sing together, I would ask you to bring those needs before your family, before your elders, and before your God. Sing with me, please.